I knew there was no place card for you before you arrived. I did not warn you because I knew you would stay home, and I still wanted the food you were bringing. I did not raise my voice when my son asked me to leave the dining room. That is important because later, Nathan would tell people that the whole thing had happened because I was emotional. He would say there had been tension, that everyone was tired, that Easter had become complicated. But I remember the exact time. It was 2:37 on a Sunday afternoon in April, and I was standing beside the pantry door in the pale green kitchen of the house where I had once taught him how to crack an egg without dropping shell into the bowl. "Mom," he said, still looking down at the carving knife in his hand, "would you mind eating in the study today?" He said it gently. That almost made it worse. The ham sat on the cutting board between us, glazed with brown sugar and mustard. I had given Brooke the roasting pan as a wedding present 12 years earlier. Behind Nathan, through the wide doorway, I could see the dining table stretched to its full length. Brooke had covered it with the linen cloth that used to belong to my mother. White tulips stood in the center. There were 14 plates, 14 folded napkins, 14 little cards written in gold ink. There was no 15th place. Brooke's parents had driven up from Raleigh. Her older sister Dana had come with her husband and 3 children. Her younger brother was there with the woman he had started dating in January. 2 neighbors had been invited because, as Brooke liked to say, nobody should spend a holiday alone. I had driven from Annapolis to Charlottesville before sunrise with 2 lemon meringue pies secured in towels on the passenger side floor and a glass dish of glazed carrots balanced in a cooler behind my seat. The trip had taken 3 hours and 16 minutes because of construction near Fredericksburg. I had arrived at 10:30, tied on an apron, washed the breakfast dishes that were still in the sink, peeled 2 pounds of potatoes, polished the water glasses, and entertained my grandson Caleb while Brooke finished dressing. Now, Nathan wanted me to eat in the study. "The study?" I asked. He set the knife down. "Just for today." "Why?" He rubbed his thumb against the handle, the same nervous habit he had had at 9 years old whenever he brought home a bad spelling test. "There are a lot of people," he said. "Brooke's mother has been having a difficult week. Dana and Mark are arguing again. The kids are overstimulated. Brooke thought it might be calmer if..." "If what?" He finally looked at me. "If you had somewhere quiet." I glanced toward the dining room. Brooke was adjusting the gold place card beside her father's plate. She did not turn around, although I knew she could hear us. Everyone could hear us. The room had gone into that special kind of silence people create when they are pretending not to listen. "Nathan," I said, "I am not asking for somewhere quiet." I know that." He lowered his voice. "But sometimes you ask a lot of questions, and Brooke feels judged, and today really needs to go smoothly." There it was. Not that there was no chair. Not that they had miscounted. Not even that somebody else needed the space. I was being removed in advance because my presence might interfere with the version of the afternoon Brooke had arranged. I looked through the doorway again. 14 place cards. She had counted carefully. She had written each name. She had chosen not to write mine. "What exactly am I supposed to eat?" I asked. Relief crossed Nathan's face so quickly that I almost pitied him. "I made you a plate," he said. "It's already in the study. There's a little folding table beside the sofa. You can put on the television if you want. We'll bring you pie later." A folding table beside the sofa. I thought of all the replies available to me. I could have reminded him that I had paid the first 11 years of mortgage payments on this house before selling it to him for less than half its market value. I could have mentioned that his father and I had spent 6 weekends repairing the upstairs bathroom when Nathan and Brooke bought it. I could have pointed to the carrots, the pies, the polished glasses, the potatoes in the oven, the linen cloth from my mother. I could have said, "I am 72 years old, not 7. Instead, I untied the apron. "Show me," I said. He led me down the hall. The study had once been Paul's office, back when this house belonged to us, and our life was still arranged around school calendars, dental appointments, and the sound of Nathan coming through the back door. It was now Brooke's craft room. Plastic bins of ribbon were stacked against one wall. A half-finished wreath lay on the desk. On the sofa, beside a basket of artificial flowers, Nathan had placed a television tray. The plate was covered with another plate to keep it warm. When he lifted the top one, I saw 2 slices of ham, a scoop of mashed potatoes, 6 green beans, and 1 dinner roll. No carrots, no asparagus, no salad, no sauce for the ham. The portion looked like something assembled for a person who had missed the meal, not someone who had helped prepare it. "Coffee is in the kitchen," he said. "I can bring you some when we sit down." "That won't be necessary." "Mom, please don't turn this into—" "I said it won't be necessary." He stood there for another moment, uncertain whether he had been forgiven. Then Brooke called his name from the dining room and he left. I sat on the sofa. The house filled with movement again. Chairs scraped. Someone laughed too loudly. Caleb ran down the hallway until Brooke told him to walk. Silverware touched plates. Nathan welcomed everyone and thanked them for making the trip. Brooke's father said a prayer about gratitude, abundance, and the blessing of family gathered under one roof. I was under the same roof. Nobody said my name. For 20 minutes, I sat with my hands folded in my lap and listened to the meal begin without me. Through the wall came pieces of conversation. Dana complaining about a teacher, Brooke's mother asking for more wine, Nathan telling the story of a business trip to Denver as though he had not already told it twice. Someone praised the ham. Brooke said Nathan had done everything himself. I looked at the covered plate. I did not touch it. Instead, I began counting. Not money, not insults, meals. I counted the Saturday pancakes I had made when Nathan was small, one shaped like a rabbit every Easter morning until he was 14 and announced he was too old. I counted school lunches packed in brown bags, peanut butter cut diagonally because he swore rectangles tasted different. I counted bowls of chicken soup carried upstairs during fevers, birthday cakes baked after midnight, casseroles delivered to his first apartment, Sunday dinners he brought roommates home to without warning. I counted the frozen meals I had filled his freezer with after Eva was born. I counted the Christmas mornings when I arrived before dawn because Brooke wanted help but did not want overnight guests. At 312, I stopped. There were more. I simply no longer needed the exact number. A person can spend years explaining away a pattern because each separate moment seems too small to justify a decision. A forgotten invitation. A conversation held without you. A holiday scheduled around everyone else. A photograph where you are asked to stand at the edge. A son who says, "Brooke is just overwhelmed," so many times that you begin to believe your dignity is one more task his wife cannot manage. But sometimes the pattern finally arranges itself in front of you with 14 gold place cards and 1 folding tray. At 3:11, while everyone was still eating, I stood up. I carried the untouched plate back to the kitchen. Nobody noticed me enter because Brooke's brother was telling a story about a disastrous ski trip. I set the plate beside the sink. I wrapped my 2 pies in their towels, placed the carrots back in the cooler, and took my coat from the hall closet. My purse was on the bench beneath the family photographs. I looked at them while I put on my gloves. Nathan at 6 in a red bicycle helmet. Nathan graduating from college with Paul's arm around his shoulder. Nathan and Brooke on their wedding day. Eva as a baby. Caleb holding a pumpkin. There was one photograph of me, taken at Paul's retirement dinner 18 years earlier. Brooke had placed a ceramic rabbit in front of the lower corner of the frame. I moved the rabbit aside. Then I removed the spare key from my keyring and left it on the bench. No announcement, no slammed door, no final speech. I drove away at 3:24. My phone rang before I reached the highway. Nathan's name appeared on the dashboard screen. I let it ring. 2 minutes later, he called again. Then a message appeared. "Where did you go?" We were about to bring dessert. I kept driving. Rain began near Culpeper, a fine gray rain that blurred the hills and made every car ahead of me look farther away than it was. I turned off the radio. I did not want music telling me what I felt. I did not want a cheerful host discussing traffic, or an advertisement for family vacations, or an old song Paul used to sing badly in the kitchen. I wanted the clean sound of tires on wet pavement. By the time I crossed into Maryland, the sky was dark. I reached my condominium a little after 7. I carried both pies and the carrots upstairs in 2 trips. I unlocked my own door with my own key. The air inside smelled faintly of lavender polish and the rosemary plant on the kitchen windowsill. I placed one pie in the refrigerator and left the other on the counter. Then I made tea. I sat at the small oak desk Paul had used during the final years of his accounting practice. After he died, I had kept his brass lamp, his fountain pen, and the shallow scratch along the right edge where he used to tap his wedding ring while he read. In the bottom drawer was a fireproof document case. Paul had organized it by category, each section labeled in his narrow block handwriting: home, insurance, retirement, Nathan, education. I opened the last two first. Eva's education trust held $82,600. I had opened it the morning after she was born and added to it every month. Caleb's account held nearly $42,000. Nathan knew the accounts existed, but he had never asked for statements. Brooke had asked twice whether the money could be used for private school. I had said no twice. Behind those papers was an account Paul had labeled Nathan Reserve. It had begun as protection for the unstable first years of Nathan's consulting business. After Paul died, I kept depositing $300 a month. The balance was $68,230. A separate holiday account contained $7,800. It paid for birthday checks, Christmas gifts, my travel to Charlottesville, summer rentals, and the little emergencies families stop noticing when the same person always covers them. At the back of the folder lay a notarized loan agreement dated September 14, 2018. $42,000 at 3.5% interest, payable on demand after 60 days written notice. Paul and I had lent Nathan and Brooke the money for the renovation they insisted had to be finished before Caleb was born. Nathan made 4 payments. Then Paul's cancer returned, and every concern smaller than survival disappeared from my life. After the funeral, Nathan promised to restart when business improved. Business improved. They bought a boat. I never asked again. I calculated the balance with accrued interest, $52,184. On a yellow pad, I listed everything surrounding my son: the reserve account, the holiday fund, the education trusts, the condominium, the insurance policies, the retirement accounts, the will, and both powers of attorney. His name appeared everywhere. My son's adult life had a financial structure beneath it that he barely saw. I had mistaken silence for generosity and access for love. Nathan had mistaken both for permanence. He believed I had nowhere else to place my loyalty. I stayed at the desk until after midnight. Every few minutes the refrigerator motor came on, and the ordinary sound made the figures on the page feel even more real. Nothing dramatic had happened in the room. No one had shouted. Yet by choosing where my name would remain and where it would be removed, I had changed the direction of years I would never live to see. Before going to bed, I took the spare guest towels from the hall closet. They were the towels Nathan and Brooke used when they visited, although they had not stayed overnight in nearly 4 years. I washed them, folded them, and placed them with the regular linens. I was not erasing my son. I was returning the space he occupied in my home to its actual size. At 6 the next morning, I walked along the harbor. The rain had stopped, and the docks shone beneath a white sky. Men in rubber boots unloaded boxes from a small fishing boat. A woman ran past with a dog pulling at its leash. Nobody knew that I had spent the night dismantling an inheritance. The world had not tilted. Coffee shops opened. Delivery trucks backed into alleys. Gulls fought over something near a bench. I bought a coffee and sat facing the water. For the first time since leaving Charlottesville, I allowed myself to feel the sadness beneath the decision. I had not wanted a different son. I had wanted the son I raised to recognize me without first calculating what my presence required from him. Sadness did not change the answer. It only proved the answer had cost something. I picked up the phone and called Priya Shah, the attorney who had handled Paul's estate. Her office voicemail answered because it was Easter Sunday. "This is Marianne Cole. I need the earliest appointment available. I want to revise my estate documents, replace every power of attorney, review a family loan, and restructure several beneficiary accounts." Only after I ended the call did I look at my messages. Nathan had called 11 times. Brooke had written that I had misunderstood, that the children were upset, and that leaving without saying goodbye had been hurtful. The children had been seated at the table. I turned the phone face down, cut a slice of lemon pie, and ate it at my own counter while rain touched the windows. Priya called at 8:06 the next morning. "Are you safe?" she asked before discussing a single document. "Yes." "Is anyone threatening or pressuring you?" "No. I simply stopped agreeing to something." She gave me an appointment for Tuesday at 9:30. Her office was near Church Circle in Annapolis. I wore navy trousers, a white blouse, and the silver watch Paul had given me on our 30th anniversary. I had slept badly, but I did not dress like a woman begging to be understood. Priya arranged the contents of the fireproof case across her desk. I told her about the drive, the pies, the 14 gold place cards, the study, and the plate waiting on a folding tray. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked, "Are you changing these documents to frighten Nathan, or should the changes remain even if he apologizes?" "They should remain." "Then we proceed." I gave her the loan agreement and instructed her to demand the full balance with interest under the 60-day clause. I closed the Nathan Reserve and directed the money into protected education trusts for Eva and Caleb, structured so neither parent could touch the principal. I closed the holiday account and gave its balance to Harbor Table, a community dining program for widowed and isolated adults. Then I removed Nathan as executor, financial agent, medical agent, insurance beneficiary, retirement beneficiary, emergency contact, and authorized account representative. Priya asked who would replace him. My cousin Linda, a retired nurse in Baltimore, would handle medical decisions. Priya's firm would serve as executor and financial fiduciary. "And the condominium?" she asked. "My will leaves it to Nathan." "Yes." "Change that. After my death, sell it and place the proceeds in a permanent Harbor Table meal fund in Paul's name." Priya set down her pen. "That is your largest asset." "I know." "It is probably the inheritance Nathan assumes he will receive." "He assumes it because I taught him to." She warned me that disappointed heirs sometimes challenge a woman's capacity only after her estate stops benefiting them. We documented my reasoning carefully. Then we reviewed every hidden doorway Nathan had into my life: online recovery contacts, insurance permissions, medical releases, the safe deposit box, building access, and emergency records. Piece by piece, his authority disappeared. Not his history, not my love for him. His authority. At the door, Priya said, "This will create noise." "I know. Noise can make a clear decision feel uncertain." I wrote down why I made it. "Keep reading that page." The demand letter arrived at Nathan's house on Friday morning. Within 15 minutes, my phone began vibrating across the counter. His first voicemail was angry. He demanded to know how one unpleasant Easter lunch had become a $52,000 legal matter. His second was frightened. He listed the boat loan, the home equity line, school costs, camp fees, and a bad quarter at work. Brooke's message called my response disproportionate and accused me of using money to punish my family. For years, that same money had paid for trips, gifts, braces, emergencies, and meals. Then it had been generosity. The moment I put a boundary around it, it became a weapon. I saved the messages for Priya and did not reply. The next afternoon, Nathan drove to Annapolis. The concierge called from the lobby. "Should I send your son up?" "No. Tell him I am not receiving visitors." 5 minutes later, Nathan called. "Mom, I drove 3 hours." "So did I." "Is this really about the drive?" "It is about arriving after the drive and discovering there was no place for me." "There was a place. The study was a place." He heard his own words. His breathing changed. "That isn't what I meant." "It is what you arranged." Brooke was under enormous pressure. Brooke wrote 14 names. He accused me of never liking her. I told him I had spent 12 years trying to make liking her unnecessary because respect would have been enough. "Dad would never have done this," he said. "Your father wrote the loan agreement." "He loved me." "So do I. The agreement still exists." For a moment, he sounded like a child, and every old instinct in me reached for the elevator button. Then I remembered the tray in the study. "You came to negotiate the consequence," I said, "not to understand the cause. Go home, Nathan." He stayed in the lobby for nearly an hour. I watched the roof of his SUV from my window. I was sorry he was hurting. I did not go down. 3 days later, I walked through the blue door of Harbor Table. The dining hall occupied a former neighborhood library with broad windows and scuffed wooden floors. I had once sat outside it after Paul died and driven away because entering felt like admitting that loneliness had become official. This time, an older man was struggling with a tray of dinner rolls. I held the door for him. "You're new?" he said. "How can you tell?" "You still look like you came for a meeting." His name was Leon Brooks, a retired high school principal whose wife had died the previous summer. He led me into a room smelling of chicken pot pie and coffee. A woman with silver braids directed volunteers from the kitchen. "That's Ruby," Leon whispered. "Follow orders." Ruby heard him. "Put the rolls on table 4 and stop frightening the new woman." I introduced myself and mentioned the donation. "Did you come to eat or to feel generous?" she asked. "I'm not sure." "Eat first." She seated me with Leon, Hazel, Samir, and 2 sisters named June and Beverly, who had been arguing about bridge since the 1970s. Nobody asked about my son or my money. Hazel asked whether I preferred crust or filling. Samir offered me a peppermint. June accused Beverly of cheating. Beverly said June had been a sore loser since the Nixon administration. I stayed through lunch and one terrible game of dominoes. Afterward, Ruby showed me the pantry, counseling room, transportation board, and shelves of meals people could take home. "People think hunger is only the stomach," she said. "Sometimes it is an empty chair. Sometimes it is 3 days without anyone saying your name." I asked what a permanent endowment could do. Ruby's expression became serious. We sat down and discussed staffing, transportation, food costs, and the difference between donations that attract attention and donations that keep a door open. When we finished, she said, "Whatever sent you here, I'm sorry it happened." "So am I." "But I'm glad you came through the door." I returned Thursday for meatloaf and the following Monday to pack groceries. Within 2 weeks, I knew Leon used too much sugar. Hazel hated being called inspirational. Samir carried peppermints for everyone, and Ruby's grandson was studying architecture. At Harbor Table, people noticed when I arrived. That small fact changed the temperature of my days. Brooke came to Annapolis on the 3rd Wednesday after Easter. I agreed to 10 minutes in the courtyard beneath the magnolia tree. She wore a beige trench coat and the pearl earrings I had given her when Eva was born. A leather folder rested on her knees. "I want to apologize," she began. I was overwhelmed. My mother was difficult. Dana and Mark were fighting, and the table seats only 14 comfortably. "You wrote 14 place cards." Her eyes dropped. "I thought Nathan had spoken to you." "He had not." "Did you ask him to move me into the study?" "I asked him to find another solution." "Did your solution include a chair at the table?" "No." "Then we understand each other." Brooke's face reddened. She said I made everything sound intentional. "Place cards are intentional," I said. She opened the folder and showed me statements. They could not pay the debt without selling something. The boat was worth less than the balance. The house carried a variable loan. Nathan's business had slowed. Eva needed orthodontic work. "And you had a debt," I said. "A family debt." "A legal one." She said Paul would not have wanted his grandchildren destabilized. I told her Paul had insisted on the agreement because love was not supposed to erase responsibility. Then she asked whether I was changing my will. "How do you know what the will says?" I asked. "Nathan assumed the condominium would come to him." "Nathan assumes many things." "This is revenge." "No, revenge would keep me emotionally attached to your reaction. I am arranging my affairs according to the relationships I actually have." She accused me of putting the children in the middle. I told her their education money was protected and growing. The adults were the only people losing access. "You always thought you were better than me," she said. "I thought basic courtesy would eventually become easier for you." Brooke stood and said Nathan was falling apart. "I'm sorry he is hurting." "You don't sound sorry." "I used to prove sorrow by fixing whatever made someone else uncomfortable. I no longer do that." She left with the folder pressed against her chest. That evening, I made Paul's beef and barley soup for the first time since the winter before he died. The smell filled the kitchen with an old version of home. I expected grief to flatten me. Instead, it sat beside me while I ate. When the payment deadline approached, Nathan's attorney requested more time. I granted 30 additional days only if Nathan and Brooke acknowledged the debt in writing and began paying immediately. They signed, sold the boat, refinanced part of the balance, and arranged monthly installments. The first payment went directly into the children's new education trust. A week later, I returned to Priya's office to sign the final documents. Linda joined by video from Baltimore. When Priya asked whether she accepted responsibility for my medical decisions, Linda did not make a joke or tell me I was too healthy to think about such things. "I accept," she said, "and I will follow what Marianne wants, even if somebody else finds it inconvenient." I had to look down at the signature page for a moment. Afterward, Priya gave me copies in a blue binder. It was surprisingly light. I had expected a life reorganized on paper to weigh more. On the way home, I stopped at Harbor Table. Lunch had ended, but Leon and Hazel were still at a back table sorting donated books. Ruby came out of the kitchen carrying 3 mugs. "You look official," she said, nodding at the binder. I signed everything. "Do you feel better?" Hazel asked. I considered the question. Better was not the word. Nothing about losing the version of my family I had believed in felt good. "I feel accurate," I said. Leon pulled out the empty chair beside him. "Accurate people still drink coffee." I sat down. Ruby poured without asking whether I planned to stay. There was no ceremony, no speech about courage, no demand that I explain what I had done. Hazel handed me a stack of paperbacks and asked me to separate mysteries from romances. For the next hour, that was all anyone needed from me. It was the first time I understood that peace was not always the absence of grief. Sometimes it was grief in a room where nobody required you to defend it. In May, a thick envelope arrived in Nathan's handwriting. "Mom, I have started this letter 4 times because every version sounded like another explanation. I knew there was no place card for you before you arrived. Brooke told me the night before that the table was full and that she could not manage another tense holiday. I said I would handle it. I did not warn you because I knew you would stay home, and I still wanted the food you were bringing and the help you always give before guests arrive. I am ashamed to write that, but it is true. I told myself the study was comfortable. It was not about comfort. It was easier to disappoint you than confront my wife, and it has been easier for years. When ordinary invitations stopped, I let them stop. When Brooke said you asked too many questions, I agreed because agreement ended the argument. When you paid for things, I accepted them without asking what it cost you beyond money. I called you strong when what I meant was that I expected you to absorb anything. We sold the boat. We will pay the loan. I am not asking you to reverse any document. I started counseling in Richmond. Brooke attended once and has not returned. I am continuing. I miss you. I understand that missing you does not create an obligation for you. I am sorry for the plate in the study. I am more sorry for the years that made me believe you would accept it. Nathan." I read the letter twice. He had not asked for money or mentioned the condominium. He had finally named the truth. Disappointing me had been easier. That mattered. It did not repair everything. I placed the letter in Paul's document case under a new label. Nathan, personal. Not with the loan, not in the trash. Some words should be preserved before they are trusted. 3 days later, Eva called. "Grandma?" Her voice was hushed. "Hello, sweetheart. Are you busy?" "I'm never too busy for you." "Mom says that's not true." I closed my eyes. "What did you call to tell me?" There was a pause, then a rush of breath. "I got the violin solo in the spring concert. It's the theme from the movie we watched at your house, the one with the girl and the stars. I play by myself for almost a whole minute. That is wonderful. It's June 6th at 7. Dad said you probably wouldn't drive that far for one song." I reached for a pen. "Your father is wrong." "You'll come?" "I will be there." "Really?" "Really." She became quiet again. "Grandma, can I ask you something bad?" "You can ask me anything." "Are you taking away college?" The question was so adult in its fear that for a moment I could not speak. "Who told you that?" "I heard Mom and Dad talking. Mom said you were moving all the money and maybe we would have to sell the house and maybe none of us would go to college. Listen carefully, Eva. Your education money is safe. Caleb's is safe too. It has been protected since each of you was born, and your parents cannot spend it. I am actually adding more to it. You are? Yes. Even though you're mad? I am not angry with you. Nothing that happens between adults will change my love for you. What about Dad? I chose my words slowly. I love your father. I am also disappointed in choices he made. Both things can be true. Are you getting divorced from him? Despite everything, I smiled. No, mothers and sons do not get divorced, but sometimes they have to learn a new way to be family. She sniffed. Can I still call you? Always. Even if Mom says not to? I looked at the clock. You should follow your parents' rules about using the phone, but you may always ask to speak to me, and I will always tell you the truth. Okay. June 6th at 7, I said. What color will you be wearing? Black skirt, white shirt, blue ribbon. I'll look for the blue ribbon. After we hung up, I wrote the date on my wall calendar in ink. EVA, spring concert, 7 p.m. Below it, I wrote, leave Annapolis by 2:30. I did not tell Nathan I was coming. On June 6th, the weather was hot enough to make the highway shimmer. I left early, stopped once for coffee, and arrived at the Charlottesville Arts Academy 40 minutes before the doors opened. The concert was held in a small auditorium with red seats and a stage framed by dark curtains. I chose a seat in the third row on the aisle. Nathan and Brooke entered 10 minutes later with Caleb between them. Nathan saw me first. He stopped so abruptly that Caleb walked into his back. For a moment, nobody moved. Nathan looked thinner than he had at Easter. His face held the careful uncertainty of someone approaching an animal he had once frightened. Brooke's expression tightened, but she said nothing. Caleb waved. I waved back. Nathan pointed toward the empty seats beside them. I shook my head once and opened the program. They sat 2 rows behind me. When the orchestra came onto the stage, Eva searched the audience. Her bow was held too tightly in her right hand. She looked toward her parents, then farther forward. When she found me, her shoulders dropped. She smiled. The concert began with a simple march. Then came 2 folk songs, a waltz, and a piece I did not recognize. Halfway through the program, the conductor stepped aside and introduced Eva's solo. She walked to the front of the stage. The blue ribbon in her hair caught the light. For the first few notes, her bow trembled. Then she looked toward the third row. I placed one hand over my heart. She steadied. The melody rose clear and bright through the auditorium. It lasted 52 seconds. I knew because I counted every one. When she finished, the audience applauded. Eva looked directly at me. I stood. Others stood too, perhaps because a child playing alone invites generosity, perhaps because they followed the old woman in the third row. Eva's smile widened until she had to look down. After the concert, families crowded the aisle carrying flowers and phones. Brooke reached Eva first. Nathan lifted Caleb so he could see over the adults. I waited near the stage. Then Eva spotted me. "Grandma!" She ran through the crowd and wrapped both arms around my waist. I held her while the auditorium emptied around us. "You came," she said into my blouse. "I said I would." "You stood up." "You earned it." Over her shoulder, I saw Nathan watching us. Tears stood in his eyes. He did not come closer until Eva took my hand and pulled me toward him. "Dad, Grandma heard the whole thing." "I know," he said. His voice was rough. "Hello, Mom." "Hello, Nathan." Brooke looked toward the lobby. "We should get the children home," she said. Eva tightened her hand around mine. "Can Grandma come for ice cream?" Nobody answered immediately. The old version of me would have rescued everyone. I would have said I was tired, or had a long drive, or did not want ice cream. I would have supplied the lie that allowed the adults to avoid choosing. Instead, I waited. Nathan looked at Brooke. Brooke's jaw tightened. Then Nathan said, "Yes, Grandma can come if she wants." The phrase was imperfect. It still sounded like permission, but he had said it while looking at his wife, not at the floor. "I would like one scoop," I said. We walked to a shop 2 blocks away. The children sat between us at a metal table on the sidewalk. Ava described every mistake the orchestra had made. Caleb spilled chocolate ice cream on his shirt. Nathan brought napkins. Brooke spoke only when the children asked her a question. No apology occurred, no dramatic reconciliation. We ate ice cream. Sometimes the first honest step back toward a person is deliberately ordinary. Before I left, Nathan walked me to my car. "I meant what I wrote," he said. "I believe you meant it when you wrote it." He absorbed the distinction. "What do I have to do for you to trust me again?" "You have to stop treating trust like a task with a completion date." He looked down at the pavement. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I." "Can I call you next week?" "Yes." "Will you answer?" "If I am available." A small, sad smile crossed his face. "Fair enough." He hugged me. I let him. I did not pretend the hug solved anything, but I did not refuse what was sincere in it. On the drive home, I stopped at a rest area overlooking a line of dark trees. I sat in the car with the windows cracked and listened to summer insects in the grass. For years, I had believed boundaries were walls built by angry people. Now I understood they could also be doors with working locks. A door could open. A door could remain closed. The important thing was that the person inside chose. By August, the legal changes were complete. Linda agreed to serve as my medical power of attorney. Priya's firm became executor. The retirement beneficiaries were divided between Eva's and Caleb's protected trusts and Harbor Table. My life insurance funded the Paul Cole Meal Endowment. The condominium would be sold after my death, with the proceeds restricted to the dining and transportation programs. Nathan received copies only of the documents he was legally entitled to receive. He called after Priya notified him that he had been removed as agent. "I understand," he said. That was all. He continued counseling. Once a week, usually on Sunday evening, he called me. At first, our conversations lasted 12 minutes and consisted mainly of weather, the children, and his work. He learned not to complain about the payments. He learned not to pass the phone to Brooke without warning. He learned to ask whether I had time to talk. Brooke did not call. I stopped requiring her to become different before I allowed myself to live differently. Harbor Table became part of my week. On Mondays, I helped in the pantry. On Thursdays, I ate lunch. Once a month, I taught a basic household budgeting class, although Ruby refused to call it a class. "People don't want homework with their soup," she said. "Call it money without nonsense." So we did. Leon became my regular dominoes partner. Hazel convinced me to join the book group. Samir taught me how to repair the loose hinge on my kitchen cabinet and then pretended not to notice when I baked him a pie in return. At Christmas, I did not drive to Charlottesville with a car full of food. I spent Christmas Eve at Harbor Table. We served roast chicken, sweet potatoes, green beans, and apple cake. Leon wore a tie covered in tiny snowmen. Hazel read a poem. Ruby scolded everyone for trying to help in the kitchen after she had assigned them to tables. Nathan and the children came for 2 hours in the afternoon. Brooke did not come. I had not asked him to bring them. He had called Harbor Table himself and asked Ruby whether volunteers were needed. Ruby told him volunteers were always needed, but guilty sons were not allowed to make speeches. He washed pans. Eva carried bread baskets. Caleb placed napkins at every chair, counting aloud to make sure none were missing. At one point, I stood in the doorway between the kitchen and dining hall. 73 people were seated. Conversation rose beneath the pendant lights. Plates moved from hand to hand. A woman near the window laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes. Leon waved me toward an empty chair beside him. "There you are," he called. "We saved your place." Nathan heard him. Our eyes met across the room. He looked away first, but not to escape. He looked down at the pan he was drying, took a breath, and continued working. I sat beside Leon. There was no folding tray, no closed door, no covered plate waiting in another room. After the children left, Eva hugged me and whispered, "This place feels like your house, but bigger." "It does," I said. Nathan lingered near the entrance. "Merry Christmas, Mom." "Merry Christmas." "Thank you for letting us come." "Thank Ruby. She runs the place." "I already did." He hesitated. "Brooke and I are separating." I did not react immediately. The news was not surprising, but it was heavy. "I'm sorry," I said. "I am too. We're trying to keep things calm for the kids. Do that. She says I chose you over her. Did you? No. I think I finally stopped asking one woman to disappear so another one would stay comfortable. The sentence sounded practiced, perhaps from counseling, but it was true enough. What happens next? I asked. We find out who we are when the house is quiet. I know something about that. He nodded. Can I call you tomorrow? After 10. He smiled. After 10. On New Year's Eve, Harbor Table held a dinner for anyone who wanted company. Ruby refused decorations that shed glitter, so Hazel made paper stars. Samir hung them from the ceiling with fishing line. Leon brought sparkling cider and claimed it was vintage. At 11:50, we pushed the tables together into one long row. Nobody sat at the head. Ruby said round tables were better for conversation, but long tables were better for seeing how many people had arrived. I counted 86 chairs. Everyone was occupied. When midnight came, we raised plastic cups. Some people kissed, some cried. Some simply closed their eyes. I thought of the study in Charlottesville and the untouched plate beneath another plate. I thought of the woman I had been that afternoon. Useful, quiet, prepared to accept one more small erasure because causing a scene seemed worse than being erased. I did not hate her. She had survived by making herself easy to keep. But I no longer needed to be easy to keep. After the music ended, Ruby handed me a black notebook. For your speeches, she said. I don't give speeches. You gave one. That was enough. Then use it for grocery lists. At home, I placed the notebook beside my bed. I opened to the first page and wrote the date. December 31st. Then I wrote one sentence. They removed my chair from their table, so I used my life to build a longer one. I read it twice. Outside, fireworks flashed above the harbor, bright enough to reflect in the dark window. In the glass, I could see my own face, older than I sometimes remembered, steadier than I had believed. I turned off the lamp and lay down. For the first time in years, I did not fall asleep wondering what I should cook, bring, forgive, or pay for in order to be invited back. I already knew where I would eat on Thursday. There would be soup, coffee, too much sugar in Leon's cup, an argument between June and Beverly, and a chair with my name understood even when no card was printed. That was enough, more than enough.